the pages. My name is Taylor, and today we are back with another, as always, exciting episode of Page Chewing. And today I'm joined by none other than two people that I am very just blessed to call friends, if I may be so bold, which is Tori from Tori Talks and Johanna from Johanna Reads. Two amazing booktubers, interviewers in their own right. But I would like to just give them a chance, if you live under a rock, don't know who these two wonderful women are, if they could do a little self-introduction just to tell you kind of what they do in the book space and how you found yourself here. So why don't we start with Tori and then maybe go to Johanna? Does that work?
Sure.
All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tori from the channel Tori Talks 2 because Tori Talks 1 was taken. And I am a fantasy author, interviewer. I talk about books. That's basically the extent of what I do here on YouTube. But yeah, that's me.
All right, and my name is Johanna from Johanna Reads, and my channel mostly focuses on the books I read. Nothing really original there, mostly focusing on adult fantasy, and lately a lot of sci-fi has entered my TBR somehow. But yeah, I enjoy a lot of different genres, and I'm just really happy to be talking to you all wonderful people here.
Oh, we're delighted to have you. And I was remiss in my intro. I didn't mention my wonderful co-host, PL Stuart. If you've been anywhere around me, you've been around him. So he's also, of course, with us today. I wanted to pull up a couple comments that we have here just to show the wonderful people who are with us. Crystal, before we started, was already ready. So we're delighted to have you. We have Covers with Cassidy's here. Let's see. Evie as well.
Evie.
Yeah, Anita's here. Wow, we've got a lot of people in the chat. You guys are popular, as you should be.
Well,
mostly
Johanna. No, and I love page chewing. You guys are you have a fantastic show here. A huge fan also of Motley Crue chats. So it's a really nice array of YouTube hosts here in the chat today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I definitely want to give you guys a chance to spotlight, kind of what you have in mind for, well, why don't we just start with that, actually? We'll go to your overall booktube channels first, but since we're talking about our different interview spaces, why don't we talk about that a little bit? So obviously, PL and I, for Page Chewing, we talk to people all across the bookish spectrum. We've done agents before. We talk to authors, both indie and trad, of course, booktubers as well, bloggers. We're not picky about who we talk to. But I wondered for you guys, if you could just give us a bit of an idea how you decided to start live interviewing. One, because live is a big thing, and why you decided to make that choice for your channel. And two, kind of what your goal is with your live series that you have. Whoever wants to take first. Okay, there we go.
I think it really started because I had just kind of gotten into the indie fantasy scene. And as an indie author myself, I know like how hard these authors work to wear all the hats and put themselves out there and market their books. And I started thinking, I have this platform and there's so many incredible indie authors that I'm meeting and talking to and reading. And I'd really like to give them like a space to have an interview where, like, if people search their name on YouTube, they come up and it's, they have some information about their books and their writing process. So when I started, that was kind of the main goal. And that was most of the author interviews I did really started with indie. And I just kind of expanded to both indie and trad as I got going. And I love hearing people's passion for writing and their specific process, because everybody's so unique in that, and it's really a great learning experience for me to just listen to people talk about their writing processes and what their influences are. And then the trad authors started, I started asking some trad authors because I'm a big believer in unification of just people who love writing fantasy, no matter how they're publishing. And then the Motley Crue chats were just, I'm kind of a like serial social butterfly. And Motley Crue is like one of my favorite tropes ever to read in any type of genre.
Sorry, my dog. I'll be right back.
You're good. And so that was just kind of my, I want to talk to my friends. Like, I'm meeting all these cool people. I want to have low key, like, pull up a chair kind of chats with people. And so that's where Motley Crue came from. And it's by far my favorite thing I do on BookTube.
Yeah, I feel like live can sound scary, you know?
Yeah.
To a lot of people, but
Yep.
I find that those of us that do it, it is our favorite, you know? It's just, it brings you, there's such a natural high after having a live conversation with like-minded people, you know?
Yes.
And I also do want to give you credit for, when Motley Crue is also one of my favorite tropes, but I always took the roundabout way to describe it, where I was like, you know, a group of friends that like have different personalities, but then they have to work together, and that's my favorite trope. And then I was like, that has a name. Like, I didn't realize it had a name.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry about that. My dog just knocked down a painting in our hallway. So it's like a big, huge painting.
Oh God.
So I just had to go and make sure she was okay. Everything's okay though. So sorry I missed the last couple of minutes, but are we on to me or
we love pet chaos.
Yeah. So I just want to start out by saying that I love Motley Crue chats, and I love Tori's interview style as well, because she always brings up such interesting and unique questions. And when I was, so for my particular series, I have a Why Read series, as you know, as you all have been on. I think that Taylor and PL, you were on my second episode of that series, and I now have 26. And Tori, you were on the longest episode of Why Read. Everybody was asking about the one with Bridger. It was the long, and I kind of felt like you were never going to talk to me again, because I took up so much of your time that day, and then you were also sick, and I was like, oh man, I told her I wouldn't take up that much time, and then it ended up going forever. But though, actually, I've told some of the reason behind why I started Why Read, and I'll go ahead and add a couple more details today just to make it a little more interesting. So I went through a brief period as a booktuber where I was having a little bit of a struggle, and maybe some people can relate, maybe not, but I went through a little bit of a challenge for a while there, and I knew this was going to come up for me as a creator, is that I don't read at the pace that many of my booktube colleagues read. I cannot read as quickly as they can, or come out with wrap-ups having like 5 epic fantasy series at a time. When I was reading Malazan Book of the Fallen, it took me a whole month to read the last book, whereas I see people inserting Deadhouse Gates with 5 other books in a month, and I'm like, how? So I think part of me was feeling a little bit at a loss with not being able to do the kind of content or keep up at the pace that other people were keeping up with on BookTube, and just falling down that trap of comparing myself to others, which is, comparison is something that I think about a lot. And I knew that wasn't healthy, and I knew that was going to be a danger of starting a channel, is that tendency to compare yourself to other people. And so I sat down with myself, and I really thought about it, and I thought about why I was doing what I was doing. And I think the why question was really, really meaningful to me. It was really important to ground me into and center me into, this is about me. It's not about trying to, is that what I want? I mean, for one thing, is that why I'm here? Am I here to be competitive and to try to read as many books at once? And I realized that's really not why I read. That's never been why I read. And in fact, feeling like I'm a slow reader, that's always been a challenge I faced my whole entire life, even way before BookTube, even since I was a kid. But it's never been why I've loved reading. You know, obviously, it's not interfered with my love of reading. And so I just stuck with that question. And then I also fell down a rabbit hole of watching BookTube videos about, it was actually one, I can't remember the content creator's name. I think Chloe Bunny. She did this wonderful video on how to fall in love with reading. And I watched her video and I loved what she shared. And it had nothing to do with it being a numeric game or achieving some number on Goodreads. It was more just about having a really lovely, intimate relationship with books. And that really spoke to me. And then the next day I knew I I love watching videos like that. I love watching videos, and I also love watching videos about like how to read as much as possible or as fast as possible. Even though I'll never get there, I'll never be a fast reader, I still find it interesting to hear what people have to say to those kind of things. But anyway, it got me thinking that maybe that's not why I'm here. Maybe I'm not here to be a competitive fast reader. Maybe I'm not here to achieve some numerically high Goodreads goal. Maybe I'm not here for numeric purposes. Maybe I'm here because I want to bring the attention back to the love of reading. And maybe that's why we all loved reading to begin with. And so the idea behind creating the Why Read discussion series, it was an excuse to get to talk with people, especially in a live format. I think there's something special about that, interacting with the chat, getting the community involved. I love that aspect of it, but it was also just to get people really digging deep into what's pulling you to a book right now. And maybe that could change at different times in your life and different seasons of your life. And I never get tired of hearing different people answer that question. So that was the purpose behind Why Read.
And can I just
so
really briefly?
Yeah, take it,
I know.
Take it, Tori. Yeah,
I think like it's so funny, Johanna, because it's so true and sadly so that we're our own worst critic most of the time. And I just like every time I watch your channel, I always come away from your videos with this sense of like, wow, that was just so insightful. like you've encouraged me to really dig deeper in even my reviews of books and the way that I talk about things, and wanting to do videos that are more deep dive, because I think, and this is something I've been in mindset wise in the last few weeks, especially, is just chasing those numbers is such a burnout trip. And really kind of that's why I'm taking a break from posting right now, is I was like, I'm going to go back, I'm going to read some of my favorite books, and I'm just going to reconnect with why I'm making videos and start, reconnecting with talking about what I'm reading more than how many I'm reading. So you're a big part of my want to just continue to challenge myself to be more insightful with how I approach my videos. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so much.
I want to jump on that too, because I remember, Johanna, I always comment on your videos and I'm like, you make me want to do better reviews. Like, I feel like my comments on your videos are always some version of that. So I just want to second that.
Thank you.
And I do completely understand what both of you are talking about, the pressure of BookTube. And I feel like it's kind of, it's almost a cyclical thing where you feel like you're on top of it, and then you don't, and then you do, and then you don't. And so, when you feel like at the bottom of that cycle, it is important to take a step back, I think. And I think we've developed a community that's willing to give that grace, which is great. But I recently had to call myself out on it because I only read one book in February. And I was like, well, I can't film a wrap up because I only read one book. And I was like, Taylor, you're part of the problem.
That is so funny. I feel the same thing. Yeah.
So
I constantly go through that too, Taylor.
Constantly.
Oh no, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, but you're still here.
Yeah.
Okay.
There might be a little bit of a delay on when you're hearing me talk. Sorry.
Okay, Taylor, are you still there, Taylor? I think she might be frozen. She'll be back though.
Okay.
She's having some internet issues. So first of all, I just want to compliment you both on your channels are both outstanding. Tori, don't sell yourself short, please. You are a phenomenal. You provide phenomenal insights. I've had the honor of being on your channel and being interviewed by you, so I can speak with firsthand knowledge that, Tori, you're exceptionally bright. You're brilliant. Your channel and your content is just phenomenal in terms of the book space. And of course, Johanna, I mean, hats off to you, right? I think I loved what you've all said, and I loved what Taylor said. Of course, I'm ready to embarrass my wonderful partner here, but I get the pleasure of working beside Taylor, like working on all of these page turn episodes. And she makes me want to be like, maybe one day I'll become as good an interviewer as Taylor, but right now I'm working on it. But I get to she elevates things, and she elevates me, and makes me want to be better. And I think that's a good thing, and that's a distinctive edge because we're doing it as a tandem, right? So, but I also know that for both of you, Johanna and Tori, you've done a lot of collaborations and lives with other amazing people in the community, from the Philip Chases to the, you name it, right? So how have those experiences been when you've teamed up with other amazing creatives in this space and done deep dives, or long form, all kinds of long form content, or even how's that been for you?
Joanna?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
I mean, I always love it. I always feel like I get something. I always just think it's fun to share perspectives, or one person shares one idea about something and then the other person bounces off that idea and shares what they think. I remember Tori and I actually were in a Shogun collaboration together. We were in a few videos discussing that book together. And I feel like those discussions every time, they were such a blast. And I could also speak to Tori's skills too, because she was bringing up things like from a narrative perspective, almost like a writer perspective, that I just didn't think about before. And so like, I think that always they're just so rewarding. There's nothing more rewarding than having an in-depth book discussion with other people who really love to go in depth about books. So it's one of my favorite things to do. And to me, it's also something special about doing it on video is that it's almost like there's so many times in my life when I can think of having really wonderful, meaningful discussions with friends, but they're just there in my memory. I never get to look back on them or relive them or think about them. And it's nice to know that not only or I have the thought, I wish other people could have heard this conversation that me and this one friend had. And so it's just nice that when you get to have these deep dives on camera, that you get to share it with an audience, you get to share it with others, and then they get to comment and interact. So I just love it. I'm here for the endless discussion about anything book related. I'm here for all the rabbit holes.
Same. Yeah, I think for me, especially for any of us who grew up as nerds, we at some point or another probably have had the experience where we just got really passionate about whatever, like books or whatever it is we're all nerdy about, music, etc. And to the general public, we kind of get the patient side eye a lot of the times, and it's really hard to want to share that passion and feel like it doesn't really have anywhere to go. And so what I love so much about having found the community and booktube and all of the writers and readers and interviewers and everybody that makes up the community is all of a sudden, like, my friends are as nerdy as I am, and we're all super passionate about things, and we have these amazing, like you said, deep dive discussions where we can just kind of liberate, and that's been such a gift, honestly, because I wish I could go back to my younger self and be like, oh, you just wait. You just store all that up, and in about, this many years, you're going to have amazing people that are just as passionate and nerdy as you are, and it's going to be a great time.
Yeah.
Well, so well said, both of you. So well said. And it's funny, like, we really do have the best space. Like, I mean, YouTube is this humongous platform, and the more I'm just very slow baby steps starting my channel, and it just overwhelms me when I start to go into different areas of even just booktube. I'm not talking about YouTube, and you realize how big some of the platforms are and how big some of the booktubers are. Like, I mean, to me, I look at you both. You're very popular. You have great numbers, and as Tori said, I think it was backstage, like, it's not about numbers and about how many subs you have, but I mean, in terms of, if you want to look at it that way, you two are both pretty prominent and doing really well in terms of numbers. Of course, there's these booktubers, like, a lot of us have collaborated with, that we know and that we love, the Patrick Leos and the Mike's book reviews that they have, hundreds of, maybe 100,000. But then you get into there's booktubers out there with like almost 1 million subscribers or more. Like, it's crazy. It's mind blowing. And you realize, for me, I'm like, I'm this tiny little, teeny weeny part, but it's also amazing to be part of something that continues to grow. And just, I'm at very much the conception stage, but I get to watch the experienced people like yourselves who I look up to and who I look to for guidance and to see what you're doing and all the innovative things that you do to make your channels fabulous. And so I'm learning a lot from people like yourself, Tori, and Joanna, and of course Taylor. But when you realize it's just you're part of this. You're a tiny part of this humongous space, right? And there's all these other segmented areas you can break off into. Like, if you just want to talk about, say, on BookTube about Tolkien, well, there's 50 channels just dedicated to Tolkien that you could explore, right? And that for all of us who've read Lord of the Rings, we could just nerd out, as Tori said, on Tolkien. You could just watch hours and hours and hours of videos just talking about Tolkien, right? And then you can get into, the same thing with The Wheel of Time, or, now with, for example, one of my favorite series my favorite series of all time that I'm reading the last book right now, The Wars of Light and Shadow. Like with Janny Wirt's resurgence, now you can watch, and both Joanna and Tori, especially you guys have done a lot in that sphere to help bring someone like Janny back into, I think, the prominence she deserves. Like, you can just watch deep dives and analysis of that, or about Malazan, or about pick your series or your topic, right? And I think that's just it's just one of the things I love about being part of it. And now for me, I'm trying to, like the three of you, start to contribute to that more. And it's a really fun journey. I'm just at the beginning, unlike you folks, but it's such a fascinating and fun journey. And it's so rewarding, and I think that's, as I learn and I grow. I mean, listen, the first few videos I made, recently I just saw my camera was flipped the wrong way, and the books I held up were backwards. And you know me, I'm one of those people like, okay, I made a mistake, and but I don't sweat it, right? I just laugh at myself and I move on. But and I think it was Phil or somebody that pointed out, I was like, hey, PL, your camera's backwards, and I'm like, oh, that's me, like, idiot. But I think it just reminded me how we're all learning and growing in this space, and whether it's the technical aspects, the actual intricacies of putting content on, or whether it's what you want to analyze in this particular video. Like, we're all just learning, but also the reminder to have fun with it, and take it seriously, but not too seriously. And if you make a gaffe or mistake, whoop-de-doo, everybody does. The biggest booktubers do. Just enjoy the moment and enjoy what we're doing, and realize that we're privileged to be able to do this. So that's been phenomenal for me personally. So
yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. Oh, go ahead, Taylor. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to roll off of that and say that that kind of really goes into a question I had for you guys, which is, I think we started BookTube at slightly different times, right? So I wanted to know what inspired you guys to get into this space, because there is a lot to learn. Okay, there's, there's, as PL said, the technical side, there's learning how you film, there's getting used to editing yourself for hours on end. There's just a lot that goes into deciding to do this. So I wanted to ask you guys, first, what made you take the leap? And second, kind of how that process has been for you. And just before I hand it off, I want to make a disclaimer to people in the chat, because I made this backstage, but clearly it is going to be an issue. I'm currently on vacation in my parents' house, and the Wi-Fi is wild and out. It doesn't know what it's doing. All right. And I don't know what it's doing. So I'm trying to find a space where I don't cut in and out. So apologies in advance for me being choppy, but I know these three wonderful people will carry it through when that happens, but just apologies to those in the chat. But now I will hand that question off to you guys. Kind of what made you take the leap, and how's that process been for you? What brings you the most joy? What was the most frustrating? Some highlights, that kind of thing.
Tori first.
So I started on January 1st of 2020. And at the time, it was, I was a young mom with 3 very young children, and I needed an outlet that was just for me, that I could talk about books and I could still kind of keep tabs on my passions and talk to other adults about books, besides my lovely husband, who is wonderful and amazing, and we have wonderful conversations. But you want to have that, and I'm such an extrovert that I was like, I need people in my life. And my first videos on YouTube were super awkward, and very cringy. But I am really glad that I started when I did, because as you guys know, January 1st, 2020, I had about 2 months, not even, I had about 3 weeks after I started my YouTube channel. One of my grandmothers passed away completely out of the blue. And that was a big hit to my family. And then COVID started, and then my second grandmother passed away a couple months later, not from COVID, but it was just a year for everybody. And booktube kind of was my outlet of normalcy in a way. Like, I can still just read books and talk to people and have a distraction from everything that's going on behind the scenes. And I started, I think, in the wrong niche, because I was reading more YA fantasy at the time, and I just didn't feel like I was fitting in anywhere, and I hadn't really found my tribe yet. And then I took a break for mental health reasons, and then came back in mid 2022, like June, I think. And that was when I started watching Petrick's channel again, and I reconnected with Philip, who I'd met previously, and that just exploded from there. And then I got onto Twitter, and that was the end of that. So booktube has been, it's so rewarding in so many ways. And I also do want to, show both sides of it. It is a lot of work. It is, I think a lot of people make the assumption that we just film a video and we put it up on YouTube and it's fun and it's easy. And, and as you guys know, there's a lot, as you said, Taylor, that goes into that, and a lot of learning curves. And the imposter syndrome is wild. That was another show on my channel that I do, that was just, the imposter syndrome is so universal for everybody, I think, in so many ways. And that, like you were talking about, Johanna, the comparison does get to you sometimes, where you look at your sub numbers and you're like, oh, but so-and-so has this many subs, and I'm putting out, I think, the same type of videos, and I don't understand. And you can kind of spiral a little bit with that. And I think that's why, like Crystal had a great comment a little bit ago about, as writers too, we need to take that step back sometimes and reconnect, like Johanna said, with, why am I doing this? Why do I love this? Like, put everything down, read a favorite book, or just like, don't post for a week or two. Like, give yourself that space to just breathe and take the pressure off and recenter, and then come back and just do a video for fun. Like, don't worry about what the views are going to be. Don't try to, I got to come back with a top 10 to get my momentum going again, like just give yourself that grace and space to kind of move back into it. And I'm passionate about this topic specifically right now, just because I am taking a break, and I needed I've been doing this full force. I went from 3 videos a week in 2022 to 2 videos a week in 2023. And I've been pretty much keeping up that schedule for the whole year and a half. And I just was like, I need a little break here. So yeah, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I think if you learn how to manage that and know yourself well enough, that it can be a really, really fun and great learning process. Teach you a lot about yourself.
Yeah. I think that's such an important step. And I think it's so important to be able to take those breaks now and then. So hats off to you, Tori, for doing that. And PL, what you were saying about like those little things at the beginning of like, oh, my camera's backwards, and I'm just gonna, I'm like, I wish somebody had told me that when I started my channel, that I didn't, that, I mean, I feel the same way as Tori, like that my earlier videos are super, super cringe. And, I have them up still, most of them, but but at the same time, I feel like I was so scared. And I think that's normal. I don't think I could have gotten around that. I think the only way you can get around that sometimes is just to keep doing it. But anyhow, as far as how I started my channel, I started on January 3rd, maybe a year after Tori, in 2021. And the way that I started was I discovered booktube, I want to say in 2018, 2019, around that time. And most of what I found at the time were channels focused a lot on young adult literature, young adult fantasy. And so I watched a lot of channels, and I watched a lot of channels that, and I was mostly a lurker. I did not comment on most videos.
We love our lurkers.
I know, we do.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to the lurkers. But yeah, I was mostly a lurker. And then what made me decide to take the step is that when I was watching a lot of these channels, I felt like a lot of them were voices that were much younger than mine. And I think part of the thing was, again, having a lot of books. I don't actually have a lot of books. That's a whole other story. But I didn't have having a lot of books. So I equated booktube with having a lot of books, reading really fast, reading a ton of books per month, and reading a lot of young adult fantasy. And I enjoyed watching those channels, and I read a lot of those books, and I enjoyed them. But it wasn't until I discovered, and I always have to credit him, until I discovered Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And I found out about him through Jessie May. She shouted him out. And he always tells about how his channel exploded after that one shout out. I watched his channel for the first time. And then I don't usually do this with channels, I find, but I went back and I watched all his backlisted videos. I thought, who is this guy? He's a history teacher, a high school history teacher. I just thought he was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I just got such a kick out of his channel, out of his style. And also the fact that he wasn't super young, and he was talking about things like Malazan, which is a series I had started. So it made me feel, I felt comfortable enough for whatever reason to comment on one of his videos, or maybe I followed him on Instagram. Maybe that's what it was. And he followed me back instantly. And then I messaged him and I said, oh my gosh, I love your channel. And he gave me a smiley face back. And so then I got the courage to start commenting on his videos. And he commented back, and I thought, whoa, that actually works. Because I think I probably tried it at some point and nothing happened. So it means a lot to me when people comment on my videos. It means so much. So I always try to comment back. But after that, he ended up saying at one point, join Discord. I'm on Shelf Space. Join Discord, join Discord, join Discord. I was terrified of Discord. I thought it sounded like the scariest thing ever. So I joined Discord though, because he was on there and he kept saying to join Discord. And that's how I met a lot of people who had channels and who didn't have channels. And then one day, sorry, this is such a long story, but one day I ended up looking on my YouTube account, because, if you have a YouTube account, or Google account, you have a YouTube kind of channel, but nothing was on there, obviously. And I saw I had, I think, 2 or 3 subscribers, and I thought that was really funny because I didn't have any videos. So I shouted out, I said in Discord, I said, hey, if I make it to the milestone of 5 subscribers, I'll do a Q&A video. I was totally kidding. And then people subscribed. So I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and take questions for my 5 subscribers. And so I did my first ever Q&A video for 5 subscribers. And that was my first video. And I didn't really take it seriously. And I didn't know if I'd continue. But then I did, and so here I am.
Well, we're so glad you made that.
Yes. Yes, I love that. And I do think that what you said about small channels commenting back rings true to what PL often says about why a lot of people start to love self-pub and indie books, because there's like this accessibility there. So if you love the book, you feel like you can message the person and say, I love this book. Whereas if you loved, I don't know, let's just go for the, Brandon Sanderson or, George R.R. Martin, messaging them on Instagram being like, I loved your book. Like, that's not going to happen. So I think that all of us, of course, make videos. Am I frozen? I hope I catch up.
Nope, you're good.
Nope, you're good.
Sentence. See if I can.
Oh, now you're frozen.
Yeah, now you're frozen. But we can hear you. Are you still there?
This Wi-Fi is going to be the death of me.
There you go.
Okay, wait. I think I caught up. Maybe. I can hear you again. I was gonna say all of us make videos obviously because we want people to see them. Why else would we make them, right? But I think it's so important that there's a smaller space, if that makes sense, like an accessible space. And I think we kind of sell ourselves short if you are on the smaller end. We feel like we're not doing something right, or we're not important, or I think we're just our own harshest critics, so I think that's a really good point, that Alan being able to actually connect to you directly is what made you start doing it. I think that's a beautiful thing. And he is hilarious, so
He is, yes.
And part of that though is that to be honest with you, and I think we've all experienced it, because in a way the community is so big but it's so small, that typically doesn't last for long, because I think all of us can agree we've all had the opportunity to interact with people who a lot of us we feel are on a pedestal in some ways when we start, and you realize, okay, they're just people like we are, and they're just other booktubers like we are, or other authors like we are. But then you realize, and I'm sure we've all had those moments, I know I have, Taylor and I have talked about this a lot, where you're sitting down there and you're speaking to an author or booktuber that you in some degree idolize in a way, and certainly looked up to, and then you're like, wow, okay, and it's very humbling and it's sobering, but it's also really exciting. But then you look back and you go, but they're just a person like me. They wanted to talk about their book, they want to talk about their channel. We're all part of this space. We're sharing our love for books, and that first time you sit down with Ken Louis or Steven Erickson, or you name the person, Alan, Jimmy Nuts, January. It's like I think for me it was, and in the author space, and again, this is something that for someone like Tori and myself, we also like, because we straddle both the booktube and the author space. It's like Tori, I could see when Tori had Steven Erickson on, and I know she's a big Malazan fan. And it's like, Tori, I'm sure there's a moment you're like, I'm talking to Steven Erickson, right?
Yep.
And Steven Erickson is just happy to be there. He's honored to be on the channel. He's honored to, but like, Tori, wasn't there like that like during the headlights, like, I'm talking to Steve?
I remember the first email I got back from Steve, because I sent him an email and said who I was, and I was very formal and like, Mr. Erickson, and here's my channel, and I'd really like to interview you. I've been reading your books for 10 years, and your books mean so much to me. And I kind of assumed that it was just going to get lost in the stratosphere somewhere, and that maybe someday he would read it. And the first email I got back from him that was, "Dear Tori," I literally went running out of my room to my husband. I was like, "Ben, Steve Erickson sent me an email," and like, there's always going to be a little bit of that, I think, because we don't, when there's a barrier, right, between us and them. We've read them through their books, and when we have that kind of an emotional connection to a piece of art that someone else has made, it's easy to kind of put them up on the like, wow, pedestal. Not that it isn't deserved, but they are humans, like, and that's the thing that I think BookTube has been so wonderful about, is I have gotten to talk to so many people that are like pedestal people, like Erickson, and I just interviewed Fondly, and she was delightful to talk to. And like, I talked to Mike, I'm friends with Mike, I'm friends with Murphy, like all of these people that just do such incredible art and have such big followings, and they are just such down-to-earth, lovely human beings, and they want to talk about what they're passionate about just as much as anybody else does. And Mike will say that, hardly anybody ever asks him to do stuff because they think, oh, he's Mike's book reviews, or, and it's like, guys, we're just people, and we all love books. Like, at the end of the day, that's that's the common ground.
Yeah, definitely. And Johanna, the same thing with you. And Tori was mentioning booktubers. I mean, Johanna, you've had some of the, at least in our little corner of the world, some of the biggest you interact and are friends with, like, just like Tori, some of the booktubers with big followings, right? And so when you first started, interacting with these people? Like, how was that for you? How was that transition to, okay?
Well, okay. I'm trying to think of who you're talking about. So I'm trying to think back because I know that before I started a channel and I interacted with Alan's channel he wasn't over 10K or whatever he is now. But I do remember at the time when I was on that Discord, I was interacting with some other booktubers at the time. And all of them made a strong point. I remember having a conversation with some of them, and that was before again, I had my channel. They said they really tried to hammer into me. Like, not me specifically, but hammer in the point. Booktubers are just people. Like, don't get this idea. Like they almost resented, I won't call out names, but there were some booktubers who told me they resented this idea that booktubers being on a pedestal. That we're all just people. Yep. That was the message that they gave me. So it's not that I am not surprised. I am honestly surprised sometimes that people want to be my friend. But like yeah, but then you get to know them and it's like Tori said, people are people. Yeah, I don't know what else to say except that. It's just we're all connecting about books, and I think that's what's most important. But I also, to me, as much as I'm so grateful for those friendships, I think that's one of the more beautiful rewards of booktube is making these connections, of building these connections, and especially building connections with other creators. But I also really love that. I love getting interactions with people who don't have channels too. Like that's something that's really powerful to me when I get a comment from somebody, and it's always meaningful if I get comment from other creators that I don't know about. And I love that. And I end up subscribing, and now my subscriber list is extremely long, and I love that. But I also really find it an honor to get comments from people who don't have channels too. Like there's something that's meaningful that they would go out of their way to comment and interact, knowing I don't know who they are, because I know as somebody who at one point didn't have a channel, how scary that was for me. So it goes both ways. Like it's an honor for anybody to interact with me, to me.
That's one of my biggest fears as a booktuber is getting to a point.
Go ahead, Tori.
I'm afraid of getting to a point where I can't keep up with the comments. That is one of my biggest fears as a booktuber is like, I still respond to every single comment as much as I can. If it's, a like or an actual response back, as much as I can. And that's like one of my that scares me.
Well, I feel like also as a viewer, whether you have a channel or not, that first comment is like a gateway drug. Once you comment and someone answers, you're like, oh, wait, I can do this. But I figured that I want to kind of take this thing that we say connects us all, which is books, which we have yet to really talk about. We're talking more about content creation, which is a huge part of what we do. But we make content creation about these things called books. So I would like to just kind of start. And if this is putting you on the spot, we'll give you time to do it. But I'd like to give you a chance to say to anyone who's watching this that doesn't watch your guys' channel yet, which I'm sure they will after, if you could give 3 to 5 books that would give like a snapshot of what you read, not necessarily all-time favorites, because that's an impossible list to make, but just to give someone an idea of where you kind of are in your reading journey right now, what you like. And if you need a minute, I didn't prepare, but I can give my 3 to 5. If you guys need a minute, I can try to pull some out, or PL can too. I always ask this question and then I don't prepare. I should learn.
You know what I'm really interested to see?
Did I skip out again?
No, we can hear you. Yeah. You know what I'm interested to see on top, and that's an amazing question, Taylor. I'm interested to see how well I know Johanna, Tori, and Taylor's taste in terms of the 3 books. I'm waiting for me personally, because I watch so much of the 3 of you, to see how well I know what your tastes are, and if I'm totally off base or so. I can't wait for that part.
I do have an idea. I think I can come up with an idea, and this won't be perfect, and I'll probably change my mind in an hour or 5 minutes, but because I'm just looking at myself through the camera, I have to go with Dune for one of my books, especially right now as I'm on this huge sci-fi kick. it's taken over my life right now. I love science fiction. I don't know what it is, but I especially love the sci fantasy in Dune and the feeling of being of the macro and micro exploration, of feeling really small, especially as the sandworms make you feel really small, and the epicness of the universe and the power of this resource and all the different themes that Dune incorporates, and in such an intimate way too. So I love Dune. It's always going to have a special place in my heart. I've only read it twice, but I really could easily reread it a few more times. I plan to. Loved Dune 2, by the way, the movie. And then with my second choice, or these aren't in order, these aren't ranked, but another choice I'm going to go with is for Malazan. I definitely have to go with the Malazan book. And while my favorite Malazan book is The Crippled God, book 10, I think just for the purposes of making this a little bit easier to not go into spoilers and things like that, I'm going to go with actually the first book, Gardens of the Moon, which I think is not very popular, I know, among even a lot of Malazan fans, but just the sense of wonder and atmosphere. And it just did something so different than what I'm used to in fantasy. I just like the weird, the different. And it's something that's really brings me into some kind of new and different setting and atmosphere, while having touches of quirky humor with the names. That's something that sticks with me about that book, even though it's been a while now since I've read that as well. And then for my third book, I have to go with A Song of Ice and Fire. And I guess it's hard. I can't choose like a favorite among the Song of Ice and Fire books. I love all 5. I will die on that hill that I love all 5. I don't think that books 4 and 5 are necessarily inferior to the first 3, but because I like to be an outlier and be a little bit controversial, I'm going to go with book 4, A Feast for Crows, especially because of Cersei Lannister, which I did a whole skit of. I just love that character. I love the female characters specifically, and I love a series with amazing female characters. I'm loving that right now in Wars of Light and Shadow, by the way, the female characters in that series, some of my favorites too. But yeah, I would say that I'd have to go with The Song of Ice and Fire because it's also one of my favorite series, and I'll go ahead and go with The Feast for Crows. So Feast for Crows, Dune, Gardens of the Moon.
Well, Taylor did say 3 to 5, so I'm gonna move to the higher range of that because
there's
no way. There's
More is
no
better.
way. I mean, it's people have already been saying it in the comments, and they know me very well. So I'm going to put Red Rising, specifically Morning Star, the third book in the original Red Rising trilogy. I just read it last week again, and just I love that series so much. It means a lot to me personally, and it's a kind of a mascot of my channel at this point, I feel like. But beyond that, a couple of other big ones for me are Malazan Book of the Fallen. Dead House Gates is one of the most influential books on me that I've ever read. This last year, I'm going to put Long Price Quartet because that taught me, I think, more about how I've grown as a reader than any series I've read ever. And it's brilliant. For indie, The Mortal Techniques by Rob Hayes is just, I love it. I'm really excited to reread it. Spirits of Vengeance, book 3 is just chef's kiss. That was the book that made me go, this series is 5 stars for me. Because I really liked the first 2, but that third one just was chef's kiss. I'm missing a main one. What am I missing? Well, I read a lot of, I like historical fiction a lot too. So I'm going to put, it's one of my favorite, I loved Shogun, but I'm going to put Killer Angels by Michael Shara, which is a Civil War historical fiction that I read a long time ago and really loved. So I do get into a lot of historical fiction. Was that 4? That was 4. Yeah.
You can cheat a bit if you got one more.
I
Just
think that was 4. You got one more.
Liza, well, I mean, I'd be remiss without throwing out my favorite Motley Crue and bromance of all time, which is Liza Black Lamora by Scott Lynch. When I tell you that the minute Thorn of Emberlane comes out, I don't care what else I'm doing in my life, everything stops.
Yeah.
Everything stops.
Love that series.
Yeah.
Okay, can I give with 2 more then? Since I didn't realize I could come up with 5.
Please do.
Then I have to go with Stoner by John Williams, which is a literary fiction / historical fiction, I guess. And that particular book, I obviously have talked about it nonstop the last couple of years.
I was waiting for, when's Johanna going to say Stoner?
I know.
For sure.
I still can't. My husband's reading it right now, and he's pointing out things that I've never discussed in that book that I've been so impressed with. He's a counselor, so I love getting his like mental health perspective on things. But I also, so that particular book is very special to me because I think I have a special thing for the person that everyone else might forget, or that is not the celebrity, the anti-celebrity in a way, the person that might be the ordinary person that you might not pay attention to. I was thinking about this recently as I loved, when I was younger, I loved the song by Pearl Jam, Elderly Woman Behind a Counter in a Small Town. And it's all about a woman that most people probably wouldn't look twice at. She's just there doing her job, and she's struggling with her own memories and trying to grasp memories and images of people. And she kind of feels and remembers things, but they slip away. So that's a very special, anyway, that's kind of a special theme for me. And then the other one, maybe I'll go with A Song for a Bone by Guy Gabriel Kay, because I read that standalone last year, and it's so good. It's so good. I think everyone would love it, but I also especially love it because of the power of song and the way that song is captured in that book, and music is very important to me. So it's such a special book. I really highly recommend that to almost everyone.
Okay, I almost got all of Joanna's.
I'm risking the wrath of the Wi-Fi gods because I had to show the love for Gentleman Bastard, because it's speaking of things that have been forgotten. I feel like not enough people talk about it, so I just had to to have a moment there. But you guys gave such amazing, wonderful answers with all different types of books. I know PL has a comment before I go on to the next question, so I'll hand it off. But I was able to guess a couple of them. I didn't know you as well as the chat, which means I have my work cut out for me. I got to watch more of your videos.
And Taylor, you're not getting away. We have to hear your 5, so for sure. So don't think that you're gonna get out there and ask your question.
Okay.
So no.
I'm in the hot seat.
So,
but hot seat. Okay, well, let's hope the Wi-Fi sticks with me if I do answer this. If I cut out, my apologies. But I mean, the first one's got to be Dandelion Dynasty. I won't shut up about it. I've never shut up about it. I love that series so much. Anything by Ken Liu is just gold to me at this point. I don't know if anyone's read his short story, The Passing of the Dragon. It's free on Tor.com. Highly recommend it. You can read it in one sitting. Changed the trajectory of my whole day. I was a bawling mess at the end. Ken Liu has an ability to write the indescribable. Like it's not able to be described, and yet he does it. And I didn't know that I didn't know that I knew that thing until he described that thing. And I'm like, oh, that's that thing. So I don't know how he does it, but he does. So anything by him, but especially the Dandelion Dynasty. Greenbone Saga. It's gotta be. Yes. I mean, Jade Legacy. I know Johanna and I, we love each other, but man, we don't agree on that series.
That's all good. I'm the outlier.
But I think, well, that's the beautiful thing about reading. It's subjective, right? That's part of the beauty. So, but for me, it just has so many themes that hit close to home. Being part of the diaspora, being of two cultures, how those individual aspects of your life then affect you, the world, what you do to the world around you, and then that has a ripple effect. It's just a study in brilliance. And
well, you do make me want to continue, Taylor. You do actually influence me to want to. Every time you talk about it, see, you're really good about talking about books too, because those are themes that I think are awesome. So, or fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me happy. Then that means I'm doing my job. Maybe one day. You might hate it all the way through, but if you finish it one day, that will be my crowning achievement. If you finish it. Then I see Vero has a comment, which they called it, the Winnowing Flame trilogy is the newest addition to this. The first one being The Ninth Reign. I read the first one in December last year, just like la-di-da. I think this might be my last book of the year. And then it just took over. Wow. It became my favorite book of the year. Williams does something so unique with that series. It's a blend of sci-fi, fantasy, horror. It's a world building paradise. So I will say, as a character-based reader, typically if I don't attach to a character right away, I know myself and it's harder for me to get into the story. In this particular case, that was not an issue. While the characters aren't, they're extremely well developed, but I would say if you would ask me my favorite part, it would be the world building, the lore, like the way that those things are developed and delivered to you as a reader is just a masterclass. So, Winning Flame Trilogy, if I'm allowing myself 5, let's see, what else is a big...
Oh,
well,
come on. I'm waiting for this.
Yeah, of course. I was thinking to do him next for last, but yeah, Brandon Sando, of course. The Cosmere is huge.
Okay.
For me.
Is that 5? Is that 5, Taylor? 4?
4?
Oh, Taylor's frozen.
Wait patiently.
There you are.
For the 5.
Was that 5?
Okay, am I back? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh
no.
That again. Oh no, we have to make sure Taylor's got her 5 in because she said, "Oh, there she is."
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Sad.
Oh.
Okay. All right. If you can hear me, that's what matters.
And can see you too. Was that 5?
Okay. All right. So then I would say Cosmere is another huge one. That's almost like a comfort thing for me now. Stepping back into the Cosmere is like a little warm blanket, you know. It's exciting at the same time, but I just love being in that universe. Excuse me. And then if I have to pick one more, I know there's some non-fantasy. How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino.
So excited to read that.
I have that on my shelf. I bought it for you.
Okay.
Oh my God, read it. It's so good. But yeah, it's a translated work. It's more slice of life. It's Japanese literary fiction. More geared towards younger readers.
That's the one
in the sense that it's trying to impart like it's not preaching anyway. That's the wrong way to say that. But it discusses things that are good for you to learn while you're younger in life. But it's never too late to learn those things, which I learned reading the book. So it's just the anthropologist in me needs it because it talks about human connection and how the seen and unseen connections between all of us are what make the world turn. It's what makes the world work. And it's just, it's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful reflection on life. So I hope that you guys read it.
I will.
But I would say 5.
Wow. Those are amazing lists. Now TBR fodder for me now.
And I don't know if I cut out again.
You're there? Nope, you're still there. We can see you.
I was just going to put you in the hot seat next, PL. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
I know what one of yours is going to be, PL.
I mean, let's start with, let's just go straight for, I think what's happened with me is that as well too, I think maybe it's an age thing. I am overwhelmed with a sense of perspective in history in the fact that this series has been 5 decades in the making. And I think a lot of us, it's no secret that I think for a lot of us, especially for me, Jenny Wirtz is one of those iconic writers who should have been mentioned up with a lot of the other great iconic writers, but I don't think she's ever gotten her due, but now she is, and the series is almost finished, and I am extremely humbled to have an arc, and I felt this, to be honest with you, it was a bit overwhelming, and Jenny, if you're watching, I can't thank you enough for arranging this for me. This is the final ultimate volume, book 11, Wars of Light and Shadow, and I'm just blown away by I feel like I'm part of history in getting a chance to read this early, a part of fantasy history. And so Jenny Wirtz is of all the authors, she is the author that I look up to the most in terms of her writing. And Taylor, and you all, especially Taylor, who knows me so well, prose-wise, I mean, I don't think I need to say anything more about Jenny Ward's prose other than it is a top. I think Johanna had mentioned GGK. It would have been close at one point until I started to read Jenny, and then Jenny took the #1 spot for prose and everything else, world building, etc. But yeah, so Jenny Wirtz, I plan to read everything she writes, and she is a huge influence on me in so many ways. Plus, she's just a wonderful person. And for those of you who haven't got to know her, she's so generous with her time. She's so open, and she's just, I'm Audrey call her friend, and she is amazing. So Jenny Wirtz makes me want to be a better writer. Dear to me, and another friend, and someone who is the reason why I really started to want to write epic fantasy, is Miles Cameron. And I have his Trader Sun cycle behind me. So Miles Christian Cameron, who is a brilliant reenactor, he's an expert with weapons and medieval combat. He's an extremely prolific writer. He's written probably 30 or more books. He writes in almost every genre, sci-fi, fantasy. He's just multi-talented. He's another just a great human being. And his books, great prose. He is someone who, again, his writing means a lot to me. It is inspirational for me, and his books are just fabulous. And I will read anything he writes as well. Well, I think we're gonna have to go. I mean, I've debated on this one because I only have 5. I mean, I have to throw Bernard Cornwell in there. I have to throw him in as like it's tough. You know, you only have 5. Like, he is someone who I think is another horribly underrated writer, and his book, especially so his Warlord Chronicles, which is his Arthurian legend historical fantasy, if you want to consider Arthurian historical fantasy, that is one of the, I think that's probably the best trilogy, Lord of the Rings included. I think that's the best trilogy I've ever read. I think that is something that I don't know if I was going to write a trilogy, like if I could be him, like that's the kind of trilogy I would write. It's just phenomenal and horribly underrated.
So good. Oh, I love that trilogy so much. So good.
I think it's a 3A-B kind of scenario. Is it 3 or 4 I'm on? I think I'm on 4 now, right? I said Jenny, Miles Cameron, and now Bernard Cornwell. Okay, so we're on 4. So let's call it 4A, 4B. If I can cheat, George R. R. Martin. I mean, yeah. Joanna said it all about GR. He is just, and another writer I very much look up to and pattern to some degree in my writing on. And then 4B was gotta be John Gwynne. Like it's again kind of interchangeable. Like, I know I'm cheating here, but I have to get both of those writing. And John Gwynne, and he recently put up a post that he had, obviously he's undergone some real tragedy with the death of his daughter. We all feel for John Gwynne so much. He's triumphed. He has a great, amazing family support system around. He's got his 2 sons who are amazing booktubers themselves, the brothers Gwynne. Speaking of booktubers, they're awesome. And it was just so great to see the whole community just rise behind John and support him and congratulate him for where he's getting with his 3rd book in the Bloodscorn trilogy. I know Taylor's a big Gwynne fan too. He's that one's interchangeable. So yeah, John Gwynne, definitely up there. And the toughest one is always 5. And I've kind of waffled a bit on this one between, like, N.K. Jemisin was always a consideration. It's kind of like floating out there for me. There's a few, but I think I want to give a shout out to, because I just did a video on this, and I have to get an indie book, an indie series in there, and Taylor knows too, because this is a series that I think, and books that are near dear to heart. I have to give a
Oh,
shout
I know
out
it's coming. Oh, I
to
know.
Legacy of the Brightwash, Crystal Matar. I have to give a shout out to Legacy of the Brightwash, Brick and Bone. I just put a video review of Brick and Bone up. I mean, that book is so personal to me. It just hits me on so many levels. I think Tori and Johanna and Taylor, you all know what I'm talking about, and because of especially what I do. And I think that book, that series, is going to go down as, we all know with the indie space, like the sort of Kaigans and the Paternuses and the indie books that are like, Tori talked about Rob J. Hayes, and a lot of his books would be considered a series, Bengali, Search Warrant, all these. But Crystal, I think that as the years go on, people are going to look back at Legacy of Brightwash, especially, but the whole series as being, in terms of indie, and like Tori said, the distinction is like, okay, they're all books, but if you want to specifically say, okay, indie, like that is a watershed book. Legacy of Brightwash is a watershed book. I think the series is a watershed, and I think that's going to be looked at as one of the most iconic indie science fiction fantasy books of all time. So I gotta throw Brightwash. There's a lot of books I could have thrown in there instead, but I have to. We need some indie representation on that list, and I was gonna pick one after pick Legacy of the Brightwash. So.
Oh, Brightwash is incredible, absolutely incredible. But I do want to also, I haven't been able to pull up the chat as much because of my spottiness, so I apologize to the chat. You've had some amazing comments. I hope I can pull them up before we leave. But one that was way ahead of, when we started, way before, is Evie had a question, which was, whenever you get a good segue, what are you all reading? And what is a better segue than right now? So I'm curious to see what everyone's currently reading. I am actually reading Winnie the Pooh. It is a book that I loved the original movie so much when I was little, I could recite the whole thing. But then I think I did that thing where I assumed I'd read the book because I'd watched the movie so much, the original movie. And I don't think I actually ever read the book. And so I've started this thing where I've got like a little collection of different versions of Winnie the Pooh because the cuteness is overload. It's so close to my heart. So I'm finally reading it. And it's delightful. The mixture of wit and cuteness overload is it's so good. So I'm taking my time with it, even though I could probably read it in one sitting. I'm about halfway through and just savoring every little mini story. I just read the quote, "Wedged bear in a great tightness," and that was one of my favorite quotes from the from the movie. So I am having a blast reading that right now. And then the other thing that I'm reading is the audiobook of The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, which is for like a private book club that I do. It's not like on booktube. And the talk about purple prose, it's perfect for an audiobook. So making my way through that. I don't have full fleshed out thoughts yet, but it is beautiful so far. But what about everyone else?
So it's really funny you say that, because I was just thinking, I want to say it was just this morning, I was thinking I should read Winnie the Pooh sometime. Like I actually had that thought within the last maybe even few hours, which is so uncanny. And part of that is that I was having a flashback to, oh no, Taylor's back. Are you back? Because I was having a flashback.
Hear you again, so.
Oh, good. Because I was having a flashback to watching Steven Erikson say that a couple of times, saying that the one book he would universally recommend everyone, Winnie the Pooh. So I was curious because I've never read it.
Accurate.
Yeah, I need to read it.
Please read it.
I actually gifted that to my mother-in-law because she is the biggest Pooh fan I've ever known in my entire life. So I don't know if she ever read it, but I did gift that to her, and I do need to read that book. But actually right now I'm reading a sci-fi book. I'm reading Ubik by Philip K. Dick. It is so weird. I was really intimidated reading this book because all I've heard about, I mean, every time you see the book, there are like spray cans on the cover. And every time I've heard people talk about it, I've mostly heard it's really weird, it's really psychedelic, but I've never heard a really good, clear explanation of what it's about. And I can understand why it's really hard to explain the book, but I'm really enjoying it. And I was scared. I was scared going into it, but I'm really, really loving it so far. And it's weird and it's quirky and it's zany, but it's fun. How about you, Tori?
Tori?
What am I reading right now? I am reading Bone Shroud by Andrew D. Meredith, which is book 2 of his Collation saga. And it's one of the, guys know how TBRs are, and it's one of those books that I've been like, I'm reading this book next month. I'm reading this book next month for like way too long. And so finally I was like, I'm stopping everything. I'm reading this book. And I'm, talking about authors that challenge you as a writer and make you think, man, I want to like think about how I do this in my own writing. World building, like Andrew is just off the charts when it comes to world building, and he's so in depth with these worlds and the details of the different cultures and religious orders, and I mean it's just mind-blowing how much detail he packs into the books without it feeling like an info dump. It's just there, which is a really difficult balance to draw, as you know, PL, as a writer. And I've been really, really enjoying the exploration of belief and, morality. And there's so many nuggets in there that have been really fun. So I'm really excited that I'm finally actually going to be caught up, hopefully pretty soon, on that series, because I know he's working on book 4. So
Cool.
Yeah,
definitely on my TBR.
I forgot to mention, I also started Prophet to Redan by Philip Chase. Book 3. I'm just taking my time with it, but also excited to get into Philip's book.
Get the tissue box ready. Nice. It is. Wow, that book really hit me. That whole series, Philip, gentleman and scholar, and of course, who knew he'd be a fabulous writer, right? Who knew he'd be a fabulous author? But he is. I already told you what I'm reading. I'm gonna cheat a bit. So yes, I'm reading this book. It's an arc. It's the final book. It's coming out in May. I'm honored. It's exceeding all expectations. Jenny Wirtz just knows how to stick the landing in every single book, but now the final book in the series, the ultimate book in the series. Wow, it's incredible. Well, sorry?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that Nico from Nico's Book Reviews, he just finished it. He finished it within a couple of days. He
took the day off work.
Yeah. And he said it has replaced his love of Wheel of Time, which was his number one favorite series.
Yeah.
I finished book 5 recently, and I agree with you. I think that's something really impressive in the series, is that each book does have a very conclusive ending in and of itself. It doesn't leave you on a total cliffhanger per book. So I can imagine that that's probably going to be a really exceptional journey for you.
It is crazy, but I'm going to cheat a bit because backstage we're talking about a certain book that I can see in the back on Tori's screen, which is The Bloodstones. Yay! So I read The Bloodstones a little while ago. I had previously read Phase, and Phase was awesome, but I'll be candid, Phase wasn't the type of book I normally read. I make no bones about that, but I loved it. I ended up loving it. And Tori, very few authors I've read, regardless of whether they're published, handle especially the aspect of mental health so adroitly and so just with such aplomb. Like just it's phenomenal, and that's a tough subject to write about and portray the mental health struggles so accurately and yet with such sensitivity. So hats off to Tori. So that's what I really, of all the other great things about Phase, that's what I drew of it. But the Bloodstones, come on. Wow. like wow. that and we talked about this a bit backstage again, that as writers, Tori, we're always striving for continuous improvement. So I want to hope that someone reads my book 1, book 2 is better, book 3 is better, book 4 is even better. That doesn't mean that you're going to achieve it, but that's what you're aiming for, right?
Right.
And I think with the Bloodstones, I definitely saw that.
Yeah.
And it was just a huge, Tori is already a great writer, but you see that leap, when writers make that leap, it doesn't matter who your favorite writer is, you're like, wow, like they stepped up their game big time. Now, and I don't think it was necessarily just a case of, okay, the Bloodstones definitely fits more in what I would normally read. It wasn't just that. It was that it blew me away, frankly. And I'm going to make a dedicated review, but it was just phenomenal. And I was like it's definitely in the running for my top indie books of the year right now. I know it's early, but but it was just, and I think in the Bloodstones, and I'm not gonna. I'm gonna save it all for my review on the comments. I'm not gonna give away any spoilers whatsoever. But what Tori did in the Bloodstones, especially, was you could just see, and I don't know where she's going. Obviously, that's all in Tori's head, but you can just see that in terms of a clash of cultures and things about to explode, it's coming. like it's gonna be, things are really gonna kind of devolve, but in such a fascinating way. And yeah, I just absolutely, it starts off and it gets you right away, especially the opening scenes. You're like, ooh, and then it was a phenomenal book. So hats off to you, Tori. I can't wait to read more from you, especially in this series. I think, yeah, I was extremely impressed. So kudos. So I'm cheating there. I already read it. It's not a book I'm reading now, but it was amazing. So
yeah, I've
Thank
been
you,
hearing
Phil.
amazing things.
I really appreciate that. I'm awkward at taking compliments, so I'm just thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is one I really look forward to getting to. Yeah.
I just want to check to see if Taylor's still there. Taylor, can you hear us? Okay, she may be trying to toggle back and forth between audio and visual. I did want to say too that as booktubers, bloggers, however you'd like to classify us, I think as well. I talked about this on my channel recently. I'd like to know how you both are feeling. So I know that for me, I've made a conscious effort, and I wasn't the first to say this. I'm not even actually sure if either Johanna or Tori or Taylor, I'd seen one of you say this on your channels independently, that I've been focused a lot on just kind of in terms of my books and my reading, that I got a lot of books on my shelves I haven't read yet. And a lot of books like arcs and stuff I haven't read yet. But I was still going and buying more books.
Yep.
And that's kind of bad. Not bad, but just it wasn't helping where I want to be. I'm somewhat of a completionist. I want to think that if I have all these books, I'm going to read them and I'm going to be able to talk about them and hopefully promote them if in terms of this is a book you might want to read, just that whole love of books thing. So I'm really focusing now on reading the books that I have on my shelf that I haven't read, and boy, I kind of embarrassed how many those are. So I've been trying to do a lot of that recently. So, but I found it's been awesome because I've been actually getting to books that, wow, I wish I would have read this a long time ago. So how are you both feeling about your TBRs? How are you focusing your reading these days in terms of arcs that you're getting? In terms of books that you've had on your shelves for a while, like, ooh, should I unhaul this or should I actually get to it? And about books that, I'd like to go to the mall or go on Amazon and maybe pick up another 5 or 10 things. But how are you balancing all that?
Yeah,
Johanna?
Yeah, I feel kind of weird saying this, and this will probably change, but I actually feel pretty good about the balance right now. When I look at my shelves, the majority of books on my shelf I've read. There are some that I haven't. There's probably, I don't know, I haven't done a percentage yet. I haven't done a check, but I have actually read most of the books on my shelf. But part of that has to do with the fact that I didn't collect books for a long time. I didn't collect books for several years for multiple reasons. I was living in an apartment. I was moving around a lot. And so I was unhauling everything I was reading, which were mostly beat up mass market paperbacks. Some of them I regret unhauling, but I didn't really collect books until I moved into my house. And another part of that is because I used the library almost exclusively for many years. And I loved using the library. And I think I was so grateful that I made use of that. But I no longer live close to my local library. So it's a big pain to get across town to go to the library. And I mostly have to use interlibrary loan to get access to those books. So most of the books I own are books that I've read or books that I know I'm going to read. And yes, I feel like I'm actually doing pretty well as far as that's concerned. There are several series I need to get to. Obviously, I need to read Tori's book at some point. And I need to read The Dandelion Dynasty. I need to read Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. That's one I'm hoping to get to this year. I'm hoping, by the way, that I can do my first vlog ever when I read the first book of that series. But yeah, I actually feel pretty pretty good about the balance right now. I just try to be really careful, one, about what I add to my TBR. I really hate DNFing books. I hate it. I try to avoid it at all costs. So I try to be very particular about the books that I put on my TBR for that reason. And also therefore the books that I end up purchasing. And that's how I go about things. Tori, go ahead.
Well, I wish I was as disciplined as Johanna with this. I am a book collector in kind of it's a problem kind of level, when I know a lot of you guys can relate. I did a video, I think in December, where I literally took off my shelves all of the books that I had not read and just left the ones that I had read just to see what my shelves looked like when I did that. And that was really sobering. And I've read a lot of books. It's not, I typically am a fairly fast reader, kind of mid-range, I think. And so I do read a lot of books, but I tend to unhaul books that I don't love or want to keep very quickly. So it's a little deceptive. But I have like 37%, I think, of my shelves that I've read up until this point. And so myself and two of my other very close booktube friends, Andrew's Wizardly Reads and Kay from Kay's Hidden Shelf, who are just wonderful, amazing people, and everyone should subscribe to their channels. The three of us kind of sat down and we were like, all right, guys, we need accountability partners and we're going to read ourselves this year, right? We're going to try and focus on that. So far, it's been going, mostly Kay has done great. Which probably doesn't surprise anybody. Andrew and I are basically making a lot of excuses and justification of why we needed this particular book. But I have been focusing on like, I read Sword of Kaigen. That's been on my TBR for like, I don't even know, since I came back to booktube, and I finally read that in January, and shock of all shocks, I really enjoyed it.
No shock at all.
Right. And so I think this year I'm being a lot more intentional about picking up the books that I'm really excited about, that I'm like, I don't want to read books because I feel like I have to. I don't want this to be an obligation. I want to read the books that I'm really excited about because I'm going to give better reviews and present them better and have a better experience overall if I do that. With ARC copies or not, I don't accept ARCs typically, just because as soon as you give me a like timeline, it puts so much, like, I can't handle that kind of pressure. So I do accept review copies, and I have a stack of them that I'm also going to focus on very heavily this year, getting through a lot of my ARC copies. And like, I have been dying to read Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless for like, oh my gosh, so long. And
do it.
I'm so excited to read it. So that one is definitely happening in the very near future. I have some other reviewed copies that I'm really excited to get to. But I think I needed to kind of figure out my reading headspace for a little bit first, because when I'm, especially with review copies, I want to make sure that I'm going into that read with the best possible headspace, because I want to give that book as much attention, positive attention as I can. So I feel like I've kind of recentered a little bit. I'm taking this break now. I'm reading just more moody right now. And I think that's putting me in a much better place to really tackle that stack of review copies in a way that's going to be helpful, the most helpful to the authors. And that's my goal. So, yeah.
And it's hard because I'm always thinking, I want to gift Tori this book and that book. I want to read this and that. But I know there's news.
I'm reading them all as fast as I can.
Because I always love to hear your thoughts on things. And I always have like for example, Lions of Alrathon, Guns of the Dawn.
Guns of the Dawn is happening this year. That one for sure is happening this year. If I can,
I just have a strong feeling you're going to love it. I have
you
such a strong
like
feeling.
Everyone else in our book community is like, okay, I'm reading it. I'm doing it.
I feel like you are Emily Marshwick. Like you're Emily Marshwick. Cool. So you're the character in that book. So I don't know, in my own head.
I'm excited to read it. She's probably a bit screw loose then, but I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Oh wow, that is awesome. I'm trying to see if Taylor can.
I did want to ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pia.
No, I was just checking to see if you were there actually. So please go ahead.
I'm here. I'm here. It seems to go in and out, but not having video sometimes helps, sometimes doesn't. So we'll try this for a minute, if y'all will bear with me. But something that you both have mentioned throughout the books that were your snapshot and what you're reading now, and I know PL is also a fan of historical fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am not so that genre, but I'm curious for the two of you, and also PL, if you'd like to chime in, what about that genre pulls you in? What do you enjoy the most about that particular genre? Maybe you can convince.
I mean, for me, I grew up, so my first real passion for storytelling came from my grandfather, and I was raised on my grandfather telling me stories about the Civil War and World War II, which he was a young boy right during World War II. So I grew up on historical war stories, basically, and that just kind of eventually transferred over into fantasy. But to me, it's not a big jump between the two, because I also as somebody of the Christian faith, I grew up on these stories of ancient cultures with these larger than life, characters and that rich history. And then to me, moving into fantasy that has these big epic ancient cultures with big larger than life characters was not a big jump. And I think especially for me as a character reader, digging into history and seeing the lives of people who lived in drastically different eras than we did, and seeing the differences, but also how similar and how much repeats throughout history, and how much common ground you can find with somebody who lived thousands of years ago is just really cool to me. And the different things that they faced in the different cultures and eras of history is just really fascinating to me. And I find just the sociology of history especially really fascinating. So that's my pitch.
I'm not a history buff, so I don't even know. And I don't know when it comes to historical fantasy. I'm trying to think of what historical fantasy I've read. I mean, I've read a couple of Guy Gabriel Kay books, so those are historical fantasy, and I loved them. But even I didn't really know much about the history of Spain, of medieval Spain, to be fairly honest, which I'm a little embarrassed about, because that's obviously some of my ancestry, but or some of my roots. But yeah, I learned a little bit more about it, especially after reading the book, and the book kind of helped with that. But especially with, I guess the other one that I read, A Song for a Bone, I did know about music history, and of course about troubadours, which I talked about in my review for that. So that was really special for me, because I love that part of music history, and I love the way that Guy Gabriel Kay did a slightly different spin on that. I liked it's still a little different, though. It still felt like a fantasy book to me. I love Warlord Chronicles. I don't know much about Arthurian legend, except for I grew up on Sword in the Stone, and I did read L'Amour d'Arthur in high school. But that's such a brilliant, brilliant trilogy. So I don't know that I love historical fantasy because I'm not a historical buff, but the historical fantasy I've read, I've really, really loved. And I also love when a world feels lived in, when it feels evocative of a real time in history. So that's always going to be a selling point for me.
That's fantastic. Those are great. I think you're convincing Taylor, hopefully, with those excellent pitches about historical fantasy. I think for me, to be honest with you, well, you all know that, for example, the series I write, a lot of it is based on Atlantis. And I've said this in previous interviews, that the fable of Atlantis is something that most authorities would agree that it's a fable. It's just that it never existed. Yet some people believe that it existed, and I think that's fascinating. So is it a fable, or is it part of our actual history? Is it an actual place that existed? And I find that what I love about fables that may or may not be based on something that happened is that ambiguity, but also what it teaches you about us, about human beings, and what we believe is history versus fable. Arthur is a fantastic example of that, right? Many scholars would argue that Arthur never existed. Many scholars would argue there had to be someone like him. We don't know exactly when he lived. We don't know exactly, was he a king? Was he a warrior? But it's that ambiguity that I find fascinating, and that space between where we can create myth. But beyond that, like, I am a history buff, so history was my major was medieval literature and English, and my minor was history, so I am a history buff. But I think the biggest thing I love about fantasy is that so much of it is inspired or based on real history.
Yep.
So much of it is, you'll take a world. 90%, I think, of the fantasy writers would agree that they create a world, and it's analogous to this world in our real world. Like, and you look at some of our favorite writers, I think mutual writers, George R. Martin. So, A Song of Ice and Fire, a lot of the politics and things that happen are based on the War of the Roses, historical event. So I think that, and I can't remember, I apologize, which one of you talked about them being so closely aligned, fantasy and
they're sister genres. Yeah.
That I think that it's not a far stretch, if you read and love fantasy, that you'll find all those elements in historical fantasy. If you and the history aspect, you realize it's not that far away from what perhaps you've read, right?
Right. I was going to say, for Taylor specifically, and I don't know Taylor's taste completely in books, but I don't know if you've read, Taylor, Juliette Marillier yet, but I just read Daughter of the Forest here in January of hers, and she, I think, is a brilliant example of taking that kind of historical real world fairy tale feel and that kind of little bit of Celtic historical vibe, and pulling that into fantasy. It's brilliant, and it's very character focused. So I think that would be a great one to start with for you.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Okay.
Oh, so sorry.
I haven't read it yet, but that sounds amazing. Oh, no, it's okay. It's hard to see when you don't have my social cues that I'm about to talk, right? So you're just looking at a black screen. But I think that sounds amazing to me. And the reason that I ask is because I love mythology and folklore. I'm a nut for those things. And a lot of those, as PL said, kind of, they fill the space between what is history, what is reality. There's a lot of interconnectivity there. So I've wondered recently if I should delve more into that genre specifically, because I feel like I might dig it. So I really appreciate that specific rec. So I'm writing it down. I'm busy over here.
Read Warlord Chronicles, Taylor. I think that Johanna mentioned that. That's
come up a lot on page doing recently. I feel like the universe is telling me I need to read that, because like a lot of the recent guests have been like Warlord Chronicles. So
I will say the first half of the first book, it takes a while to get adjusted, especially if you're not familiar with, as I was not familiar with those parts of history or those parts of Arthurian folklore, because he does give you a lot of exposition, a lot of places and names in the first half of the first book. But if you could just keep going, it does really pick up. It kind of reminds me of First Law in that way, because that's how I felt about the First Law trilogy, where the first book, I kind of had some struggles with it, and then I really fell in love with the second book. But I will say in Warlord, I felt like the end of the first book really gripped me, and then the second book was my favorite personally. But the whole trilogy, I thought it was excellent. But another caveat to that, Taylor, and this is where I'm not sure about your reading taste, I would say that it is Warlord Chronicles. So if you're not into battle scenes, which I'm not usually, but Bernard Cornwell is so brilliant in the way that he writes battle scenes that it's also hard to sell if that's not your cup of tea when it comes to fantasy. So I just want to make sure that's clear too. If you're not into battle scenes and you're not into
give me all the battle scenes. I'm on board with that.
Yep.
Okay. And yes,
very much on board.
Please read Warlord if you love battle scenes, because in my opinion, he writes some of the best battle scenes ever. Like one of the best. Up there with Erickson. So good.
100% agree. Up there with John Gwynne, up there with Evan Winter, up there with Janny Wirtz, underrated for battle scenes, but yeah, Bernard Cornwell, Miles Cameron, Jenny Wirtz, Bernard Cornwell, Evan Winter, John Gwynn. I'd say those are definitely somewhere in my top 10 of writing. Actually, Philip Chase, the wonderful Philip Chase, he's doing these series of videos, awesome videos of top 10 lists with, best world living authors, and like he does one on battle scenes. Look at his list; it's phenomenal. If you're looking for that, but my partner Taylor, she does love her battle scenes, so that's definitely But Bernard Cornwell is definitely up there.
Yeah, I got after Philip in the action one or the battle one. I'm like, you need to read Warlord Chronicles.
Yeah,
and the
I
Green
said the
Brothers
same
would
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw in the comments it's the same thing. You got to read Bernard Cornwell. So
yes, and Sword of Kaigen, because I think that the battle scene in Sword of Kaigen is a standout as well. So yeah, especially if you like everything. Sorry, go ahead.
I love when fantasy authors can, because I'm a big battle scene nerd as well, and I think it's really cool when fantasy authors can combine the martial arts with magic in a way that's, I think Rob does that really well in Mortal Techniques, really well. Johanna Fondely does it really well in Greenbone Saga. Just saying.
Maybe I need to keep going.
Gotta give a shout on that same vein. Virginia McLean. Amazing with that, like Fonda Lee, and hers is a very Asian inspired, and it's I wrote in my review, like, you guys have seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Read Virginia McLean's books, like they are just like she's got that action stuff down pat with combining the magic and the flying katanas. It's just it's awesome. So she did good stuff. So well, Taylor, you still there? Can you hear us? I'm not sure if Taylor's
Poor Taylor.
Yeah, I know. Like normally we run. I mean, I think the four of us could talk for the next 3 hours, and it would seem like 2. But we do want to respect your time. You guys have been so generous with it, and we absolutely love talking to you. But I know we'd probably just keep going. So at some point we're gonna have to wrap this up. I'm not sure if Taylor can hear her. She's probably gonna come back, but then come in the middle of the wrap up. There she is. Okay, I'll give that over to Taylor. I was just saying, Taylor, about how generous Joanna and Tori have been with their time, but obviously we're at that point where we should probably start thinking about wrapping up. So I'll turn that back over to you. Are you there, Taylor? She's frozen again. Okay, well, what I will do is I'll wait till she comes back, but I'll start off with maybe perhaps for both you and with Tori, for you and Joanna, to tell us as we wrap up about where to find you in the space, your YouTube channels, your social media. For you, Tori, of course, your books, anything you would like those listening and watching to know about where to get in touch with you and where to engage with you in terms of what you put out in terms of content.
Well, I am most active on Twitter and YouTube, and I am also on quite a few of the community Discords, but I also do have a Patreon and a private Discord server for anybody who wants like sneak peeks of my writing, and just it's a very supportive, lovely little community in there. We do a lot of sprints, reading and writing. For books wise, you can find both Bloodstones Unfazed on Amazon and pretty much everywhere else. I do still have a few signed copy of Bloodstones on my website, so you can order those right off my website. And keep an eye out on Twitter. You can also sign up for my newsletter on my website. I will be putting out information on the upcoming books. I'm working on Queen's Wolf, which is the sequel to The Bloodstones currently, and I do not have a date for that yet, but I am working on it. And then I'm also working on an extension of the short story I wrote for the Winter Anthology back in December, which is a series called Cold Silver for Souls, and it is a necromancer bounty hunter in a fantasy world inspired by the Yukon Gold Rush, and I'm turning that into a series. So that first book is also in the works potentially for this year. So that's my spiel of where
Cool. Yay. Yeah. And me, my channel, the handle is Johanna_Reads. and that's where you can find my channel. I'd love to have you there. I also have a Discord that I share with Matt on Books, who was here in the chat. So thank you, Matt, for being in the chat, and Josh from Red Fury Books. The three of us co-own a Discord together called the Fireside Discord, and we would love to have you there too. We have wonderful hangout sessions. It's not huge like other Discords. It's very easy to navigate around. We don't have 100 sections like a lot of different Discords. So we try to keep it friendly, keep it cool there. There's a whole little Johanna section if you want to interact about my channel there. But otherwise, I am on Instagram and Twitter, just not constantly. And yeah, thank you guys so much for having me as a guest and getting the wonderful chance to talk with Tori. I'm just such a big fan of all three of you, so I'm so glad to be here. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I guess I'll go next and leave Taylor. Yeah, we can hear you. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
Okay, since you can hear me now, let me take advantage of that, and then I'll pass it off to you to bring it home. I just want to say, a thank you to Tori and Johanna. I know PL already said this, but for giving us your time. We've all interacted on each other's live streams before, been in each other's chats, but there's just something so wonderful about being together. Next time we do this, I will make sure that I'm not on vacation and it won't be this choppy, because I would just love to talk to you guys for longer and without having to pop in and out. But regardless, this was a delightful conversation, and I respect you both so much for what you do in this space. If you
Likewise.
so happen to be watching this and you don't know who I am, one, thank you for watching Page Chewing. Two, I am Taylor. My booktube channel is Made Between the Pages. You can find me on Page Chewing beside PL quite often. We have a whole playlist. It's always in the description, as will Tori and Johanna's links be in the description down below as well. I'll keep my outro short for today, just in case. But thank you for watching, and everyone in the chat. I wish I could have pulled your chat up more often. See you all commenting, and just thank you so much for being here. You guys make the live shows 10 times better when you're here. So thank you for that. And I'll pass it off to PL.
Yes, thank you so much, Taylor. So yeah, you can usually find me in terms of this space on Taylor's channel, beside her, with her, my channel, us doing page chewing. That's the heart of what I do on BookTube, and I'm so honored to do it with her and to interact with all the creatives like Tori and Johanna, the fantastic creatives in the community that we are lucky enough to have on the show. In terms of the books, the Drowned Kingdom saga, I mean, Amazon, Goodreads, all that. The most recent book is out I have it here. Alliance Pride, book 4 is out right now. And I'm freshly working on book 5, entitled A Pack of Wolves, which will be out in the spring of 2025. So 7-book series, it's getting there. Book 5 coming out next year. So we're making it. We're getting there. But
that's exciting.
Yeah, thank you. So, but I got a lot of books beyond that plan, so got to keep moving. And with this gray beard, time is not my friend. So, yeah, regarding my reviews and stuff, I'm actually getting my YouTube channel a bit more. It's running out. It's up and running, and it is slowly developing. And I'm going to take my time. It's slowly for me, not about subscribers. I'm just expressing my love for books and just. That's just another great venue to do it in. So I'm having a lot of fun. I'm learning. I'm fumbling. Like I said, I had my camera on backwards for a couple videos. Like as Joanne and Tori talked about, I'm going to look back in 5 years and go, "Oh, those are pretty cringy."
Yep.
But whatever.
Right.
Right? I'm just having fun. So and hopefully I'm shedding a light on books that I love and books that people might want to be interested in reading. So yep. So my channel, the Drowned Kingdom Saga, and then. I also post on Before We Go blog. Shout out to the wonderful Beth Tabler, incredible leader of Before We Go blog, and also leader of Grimdark Mag. That Taylor and I are both there as assistant editors. Shout out to the Before We Go blog crew. They are amazing. So you can find my reviews and all kinds of things like top 10 lists and top 25 lists that I put out on Before We Go blog. I will be putting out a top 25 booktuber one soon. And I have a feeling that 3 people I know and love might be on that list, but we'll see. Anyways, I'll put it out eventually. And yeah, my reviews on Goodreads. And as I said, page chewing, when it comes to page chewing, again, thank you so much, Tori and Johanna, for being part of it. Taylor and I have a lot of, I think, exciting things planned for page chewing. So I hope everyone continues to tune in. And again, as Taylor said, thank you so much for the people in the chat and the people who watch the live or tune later to watch the replay. Without you, it wouldn't be what it is. So thank you so much for supporting us.
All right. On that note, thanks for everyone for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.